Hi, I'm Charlotte. Welcome to Wake Up Well, and this week we are looking at the holy habit of silence and solitude. So let's start by looking at the example of Jesus himself. In Mark 1:35, it says, "Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray." Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. And the thing that jumped out at me when I was reflecting on that verse was the first word, the word before. Because we know that Jesus had a demanding and busy life and ministry. He was always being asked by people to heal and spend time with them and to eat with them and to do all sorts of things. And there were always demands on him. And yet we read time and time again that this happens, that he goes out to an isolated place to pray. But I love the way this verse phrases it. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Before his demanding day ahead of him, before the next town that he was going to go on to, before the preaching that he was going to do that afternoon, before the things that he was called to, these good and important things, before all of this, Jesus made time to just sit and be alone with his heavenly Father. Before. It's so challenging sometimes, I think, to us about what is our before. Do we put the same things first that we see Jesus doing? I don't know about you, but on good days, I can say absolutely yes. Jesus is my before. Before anything else happens, I spend that time with God. But on bad days, the days that become really busy, overwhelmed, over-distracted, I can sometimes get to the end of the day and find myself falling into bed exhausted, and the day has run away with me. And I haven't even managed to stop and slow down and spend that time with Jesus unless I'm really intentional about it. And it reminds me of something I read really recently from John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. He says this: "You can chart Jesus' life along two axis points. The busier and more in demand and famous Jesus became, and the more he withdrew to his quiet place to pray." Usually for us, it's the exact opposite. When we get over busy and life is hectic and people are vying for our time, the quiet place is the first thing to go, rather than our first go-to. The first thing we lose is unhurried time to just sit with God in the quiet, to pray, read a psalm, take an internal inventory, let our souls catch up to our bodies. In seasons of busyness, we need more time in the quiet place, not less, definitely not less. And if you're running through your Rolodex of excuses right now, I'm a full-time mum, I have a demanding job that starts early, I'm an extrovert, etc. Stop for a minute. Think about this. Jesus needed time in the quiet place. I repeat, Jesus needed time. And a fair bit of it. You think you don't? And I find that really challenging, particularly that line that says, often the quiet place is the first thing to go, rather than our first go-to. And I want to make sure that isn't the case in my life. I want to make sure that my before anything else, the thing I put first, the most important thing in my list is always that silence and solitude, that quiet time with Jesus. And so for me, that looks like sitting in this room, in this chair, where I sit every morning with a cup of tea and my Bible and just the quiet and stillness of the morning. And I sit and spend time with God. And maybe that's what that looks like, or what that could look like for you too. Or maybe the morning just doesn't work for you. When is going to be your before? Maybe for you, you need to look at your whole diary. And before you put anything else in, before you put in your work, before you put in your hobbies, before you put in spending time with your friends, you need to put in this time you will spend with Jesus. And then when another offer comes up that seems to clash, remember which you said yes to first. What is going to be your before? And when are you going to do that? When I was at university, I had this really twee poem printed and stuck on my wall. And I just want to leave this with you because it really helped me change my perspective and reframe my mindset on what needed to be the before in my life. It's called The Difference. I got up early one morning and rushed right into the day. I had so much to accomplish that I didn't have time to pray. Problems just tumbled about me, and heavier came each task. Why doesn't God help me? I wondered. He answered, you didn't ask. I wanted to see joy and beauty, but the day toiled on, grey and bleak. I wondered why God didn't show me. He said, but you didn't seek. I tried to come into God's presence. I used all my keys at the lock. God gently and lovingly chided, my child, you didn't knock. I woke up early this morning and paused before entering the day. I had so much to accomplish that I had to take time to pray.